Hey, welcome to the Dr. Jeff Experience. Oh, let me get my mic plugged in here. Welcome to the Dr. Jeff Experience. So glad to have you. So glad for you to be here today. And man, we got a show for you tonight. It's I'm not gonna say it's heavy, but it's necessary. It's a show that many of us can understand, many of us are going through. And I just want to come on tonight and let's see if we can deal with this a little bit. Welcome. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving and all of that stuff. Ours was pretty quiet this year. It was quite different, but it was good. Got to see my grandkids from Jersey, and that was good. That was good. And so here we are. The holidays are upon us, and man, let me tell you. Hey, my sister, how you doing there? Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. The holidays are upon us, and for everybody, it's not the best time, and I truly understand that. It could be a difficult time. It could be sad time, along with the joyful time. But we're going to try to help you tonight and get us past this because I'm really not even going to say past it. What I'm going to say is we're going to help us get through it. Because we never want to. I never want to tell a person, hey, get over it, get past it, whatever. I don't ever want to do that because that's like putting off your friend or putting off your loved one. And I never want to tell anybody going that, hey, Karen, hey, my brother Scott, what's going on to you and Evangelist Hope, Dr. Hope. Good to see you guys. Go ahead and share this. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and let somebody know. Share it with somebody. Or if you're on YouTube, go ahead and share it and like and subscribe so that you know what's going on. I got a new thing that's going to be coming out. We're going to be dealing with some something that will help you get through some of these times. And we're going to be dealing with some earth sounds, some meditation sounds to help you out throughout your day. Yeah, like my Christmas shirt. This is my peace shirt. I feel like I'm in a garden. I feel like I'm in a garden of peace. So I like to wear this, especially for tonight. We're going to talk about some things, and I want to lift some folks up. I want to talk about dealing with the holiday blues and grief. I know this can be tough, but we're going to deal with it. And we're going to help each other. Is that all right? Cool. So first thing I want to do is deal with some. I know I dealt with this before. I want to deal with some of the types of grief. There's a lot of things out there. I couldn't find one of my books I was looking for, but through some research, I recall from some of my studies in pastoral care, pastoral counseling. We had our psychology classes that dealt with grief. And one of those is called anticipatory grief. Now, you say, what is anticipatory grief? Well, it's anticipatory grief is grief experience before a loss occurs, often in cases of terminal illness or impending separation. For instance, I dealt with this anticipatory grief with my aunt and my mom. My mother got sick. She had a stroke in 2005, right at the time of my first retirement. And we dealt with, not dealt with, but we helped my mom through her illness from 2005 right up to 2020 when she passed. And it was, I'm just going to say, it was a horrific experience for me. Along with that, we dealt with her oldest sister, who was dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia, and we watched that. So it was a thing of you saw the progression getting closer to transition, and it was an anticipatory. I dealt with anticipatory grief because we anticipated this taking place. You were this is going to happen, and there's nothing that you can do. You try and do everything that you can, and it can be overwhelming. Or that separation, even separation from a job or a location. That soon you're going to be leaving a particular location. I remember when I left where I was raised in New Jersey and moved to a totally different state. I know my children had some of this anticipatory grief. I remember the ride to Florida. Man, my daughter, we had to stop several times. I didn't think I was going to make it for a minute because she got sick all the way there, and I had to pull over a few times. But I felt it because my way of life was changing. The way of life that I had known since 8, 9 years old was now changing. So that's what we call anticipatory grief. And some of the characteristics of that is feelings of sadness, anxiety, and emotional preparation for the impending loss. You have to prepare for it because it's going to happen. You don't know when, and we never know when anything's going to happen. But in the case of somebody sick and you see their decline, you know that very soon this is going to happen. And unfortunately, you get to see the different stages of decline. And, that's the anticipatory grief that I'm talking about. When your time is coming to separate from a job or separate from a location, every day you mark on that calendar, you X out that day and X out that day, and you got 35 days to move, 20 days to move, 15 days to move. And as you're going through that, you start feeling sad because there's a change about to take place. There's anxiety that takes place. There's that emotional preparation for that impending loss. And that's what we call anticipatory grief. Okay. You get a feeling of sometimes relief, which some people would say, how do you get relief from that? Well, it's almost like saying, okay, I don't have to go through this anymore. And even though I'm going to miss my loved one, there's the relief of not having to deal with it any longer, knowing that that person is transitioned with the ancestors now. Or in the case of moving, there's relief that, okay, the day is here now. I can go. But there's feelings of numbness. Sometimes there's feelings of guilt. There's feelings of sadness. There's feeling of shock. And then there's a feeling of fear because it's like, oh man, this is a new way of life right now. So those are some of the feelings that we get with. And I'm going through about 6 of them. And then we're going to deal with some things on how to cope with it and what things to do to help you along the way. So that's anticipatory grief. And then and anytime if you guys are watching through YouTube or Facebook, you've got a question or a statement, just go ahead and be respectful. Be respectful. just go ahead and ask that question or make that statement or comment, okay? So let's deal with normal grief, what it is. And really nothing's normal about grief at all. I don't know why they name it normal grief, but it's the typical emotional response to loss, which it gradually lessens in intensity over time. In other words, over time, you start uh, feeling a little bit better. You're not as um, emotionally upset about it. You kind of come to terms with it, but that doesn't mean that you say, I'm over it. Okay. It's not like the anticipatory grief. It's when it happens, it's the normal response. But over time, you gradually, it lessens in intensity. Some of those characteristics are waves of sadness, anger, guilt, and then acceptance as part of the healing process. You say, okay, this is the new thing now. I accept it. I did everything I could do. It is what it is now. And let's not move past, but let's move on. Because again, for me, and I suggest this to others, you don't want to use language like I'm gonna get past this, because it's almost like I'm putting off my loved one, my friend, and I'm not going to deal with it anymore. I would say get through it and learn how to cope with it. So yeah, that's normal grief. And when we're dealing with normal grief, denial may be the first stage of grieving. That's so true. Denial in the fact of, you really don't want to believe this is happening. And that's what we want to help with. It can be difficult, but it's temporary. There's waves of sadness, there's anger, there's guilt, and acceptance through the healing process. It's part of the healing process. The grief is deep, man. It's deep. I'm normally a wordsmith, and I'm sorry, but I regret the fact that I did not deal with that word grief. I normally deal with the etymology of a word, etymology. I normally do the etymology of a word. In other words, finding out where did that word come from? When did it become part of our American lexicon? And when we deal with that word grief, we see it's an old French word. It's an old French word, and it goes back to it goes back to you're not even going to believe what this actually means. Well, I'll get to that. We dealt with anticipatory grief. We dealt with normal grief. Now let's deal with something called complicated grief. Okay. Complicated grief. And this is just what it says. Complicated grief. It's prolonged or grief disorder. Okay. Prolonged or grief disorder. It is it's intense grief that persists for a long time, and it interferes with your daily life. In other words, it paralyzes you. It's that grief that's so tough that your normal way of life is truly affected. And this complicated grief normally comes with a loss of a child, or a loss of a spouse, long-term spouse, or sudden violent death of someone who's close to you, a friend or family. That's a complicated grief, and It is exactly what it's called. It's prolonged or it's, grief disorder. And it actually interferes with your daily life. You don't know which way to go with this. This is something that you need to really get professional counseling for. Um, it's difficulty accepting the loss, the yearning for the deceased, and the inability to resume normal activities. This is a tough one, and this is something that when this happens to you, you really need to seek out professional help. Um, it's good to have prayer because prayer does help. But in these cases, in any cases, to me, professional help is what's needed. Let me just go back to this term grief and etymology. It comes from the Middle English word gref, Gref, which was borrowed from the Anglo-French word gref. Gref means burden, molestation, wrong, hurt, hardship, calamity. It comes from the vulgar Latin word grevis, Grevis, which is an alteration of the Latin word gravis, meaning heavy, oppressive, seriousness. So you see from ancient times that from the beginning of that word that it was heavy. The word grief was first used in the 15th century. The word grieve comes from that Latin verb gravare, which means to burden. Okay. So it's the reaction of the loss of something important. Yeah. So we were talking about complicated grief. Yeah. Complicated grief is, it's nothing to be played with. None of these are. But complicated grief is something that we go through, and we want to make sure that we immediately get professional help in those in something that takes place like that. The loss of a child, the loss of a spouse, sudden death, sudden violent death of someone who is close to you. Then there's something called disenfranchised grief. Again, if you have any questions, you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. If you have any questions, any statements, you want to chime in, come on and get on in. I see Brother Darren. I see Lynn. I see Tina. Come on in if you got any questions, any statements. We're talking about grief and how to get through it, especially with the holiday blues. So there's this thing called disenfranchised grief. We talked about anticipatory grief when we are expecting something to take place. We're expecting the loss of a loved one, or we're accepting an impending separation, meaning it could be a divorce. You know that in a couple of months or a couple of days, and a separation is taking place in a relationship, or a divorce is taking place, or you're leaving a job, you're getting ready to retire, or you're just going to a different location, you're moving. Those are all anticipatory grief because you know that it's coming, and it could be difficult. Then there's the normal grief we talked about, and then there's the complicated grief. Now let's talk about this thing called what they call disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief. This was deep to me. Even when we dealt with this in school, it was always deep with me. This is the grief that is not openly acknowledged or socially supported. Okay. Good evening, Dr. Hope. How are you? Good to see you. Good to have you on. Listen, it is disenfranchised grief is something that can be argumentative, believe it or not, because what disenfranchised grief includes is, let's say, missing a milestone. Okay. Missing a milestone. What is a milestone? Something very significant. Missing a A milestone event. Let's say you were waiting for a family reunion to take place and you were looking forward to catch up with a lot of the family and friends of family who normally come to your reunions, or it could be a class reunion or a reunion of people who worked on the same job, and it doesn't happen, and you grieve about it. Okay, you grieve, you literally grieve about it. It could be the loss of an online friend, somebody who you really don't know that well, but you share something online. You guys are like pen pals. You know, you chatted up with each other. You send inspirational messages to one another. We ain't talking about, you know, a jump off or a side chick or a side dude or anything like that, or a side piece. We're talking about a friend. Okay. That's a complicated grief, and I mean that's a disenfranchised grief. Um, I'll give you another one. It's disenfranchised because it's not openly acknowledged, and a lot of people, you know, look at you like, man, why are you tripping over that? Um, Another example is loss of a pet. I know there's some people on here right now who have lost pets, and I never forget one day. I was had a certain position in charge of some things at a certain church, and I came in one day, man. I was just upset, and I was director of ministries, and uh, in between my pastoring, and I said to a couple of guys, "Hey, man, I'm not really feeling it today. You know, I lost my dog," and they laughed. It was like, wow, that's totally not the response I was looking for. Started to punch somebody in the throat, but I said, nope, not gonna do that. Get in trouble. But that was my feeling because it was a disenfranchised grief. Like it wasn't openly acknowledged or socially supported. So we're talking about a loss of a pet, a miscarriage can be not socially supported or openly acknowledged. Some people will just like, you know, hey, get over it. Or um, the end of a relationship where others may not recognize the depth of your pain. So that's a very complicated grief, also. So that could actually go into the category of complicated grief, but that's known technically or clinically as disenfranchised grief, where grief that is not openly acknowledged or socially supported. It's uh, the thing that I tell you to do with that, and I urge you to do, and what is urged in this instance when it's a disenfranchised grief is you acknowledge it. You acknowledge it, and process your anger, okay? Because you become angry through this because people don't have empathy with you. They don't feel you on that. You know, it's a pet, man. It's a dog. It's a cat. Get over it. You know what I mean? Kids have birds or goldfish. Um, I remember my son had I can't remember if it was a hamster or a gerbil, one of those animals. And, you know, we had a funeral for it, man. You know, put it in a little box and we all sat around the table and had a little prayer. And I think I gave a little word, a little message about it, you know, and went on and buried it, you know, because you know, you don't know what that child is feeling. You don't know what that person is feeling. So you want to have empathy with them, and you want to have compassion for that person. You don't want to disenfranchise what in fact they may be going through. Because later on in life, you don't know how they're going to deal with it. So you help one another go through whatever the grief is. There's another one, cumulative grief. And this is tough. Cumulative grief, it results from experiencing multiple losses in a short period. Um, it compounds the emotional burden. You know, Yeah, some of us have had times where I got a buddy right now. Matter of fact, as I talk about it, I need to call him or text him tonight and just check in on him. They have one loss of life, and they have a funeral, and before they could even get a chance to breathe, someone else in the family passes away. I've even seen it as a pastor where I've had to plan one funeral, and before we could have that funeral for that family member, somebody else in the family very close passes away. So now you end up coming back 2 or 3 days later planning the second funeral. And in those instances where here in Atlanta we just had a situation where there was a murder suicide, and there was 5 people involved. There was 3 children, a mother, a boyfriend, a grandmother, all at once. Somebody's got to plan those funerals, all 5 of them. That's cumulative grief. And what happens is you have the characteristics of that are feelings of being overwhelmed, numbness, emotional exhaustion, not enough time to process one before another happens, or numerous at one particular time, or within a short span of time. One of the things you got to deal with that is I suggest to people, and this may sound strange, but I suggest it for all of these: anticipatory grief, normal grief, complicated grief, disenfranchised grief, cumulative grief. You eat well. Make sure you're eating well throughout this process. Make sure you're getting sleep. Make sure that you're talking with friends. Go out and walk. Go out and walk. Get some blood flow. Get those endorphins going. When you're walking, you're exercising your body and your mind, and you're not focusing on what's actually taking place, because these things can be paralyzing to you. They can make you so numb that you don't even want to get out of bed. So you got to force yourself. You got to have good friends that say to you, come on, get up. We're going to work this thing out. Okay. We're going to get you through this. Pray. Prayer works. Are you listening to me? Prayer works. Get your prayer position. You pray, whatever your belief is. All beliefs have prayer. So that's cumulative grief. And I'm not rushing through these, but I want to get to some examples of how to deal with this, okay? And last one, I'm just dealing with 6. I dealt with anticipatory grief, where there's that loss that you are expecting, whether it be a loved one, like I explained about my mom and my aunt, how we took care of them for so long, and we saw the steady decline. And you know that it's going to take place. It's that terminal illness or that impending separation. It's normal grief, the typical emotion response to loss, which gradually lessens in intensity over time. There's the complicated grief, that grief that occurs when there's loss of a child, or a sudden death, a violent death of someone. That disenfranchised, when people don't openly acknowledge or socially support you, when it's a loss of a dog, loss of a pet, loss of an online friend, that sort of thing. And then there's that cumulative grief, when you have multiple losses in a short period. And then there's that, here's a question. Does racial or social injustice cause disenfranchised grief? It absolutely can. It absolutely can. It's a good question. It absolutely can, because there's many of us who have, unfortunately, been victims of racism or social injustice, and there's a grieving period that goes with that. There's a grieving period that goes with that, and it can be a disenfranchised grief because, again, it's not socially supported. You know, some people just say, oh man, that's just the way life is. Oh man, that's, but when you are denied something because of the color of your skin, or because of your gender, or because of your how you identify. That's a grief. That's a loss. Okay. And grief comes from loss. There's a loss of something. So yeah, absolutely. It can be racial or social injustice can be part of disenfranchised grief. There's something called delayed grief. And what is that? Delayed grief is a grief that is postponed or not immediately experienced after the loss. It's often due to the need to stay strong or focus on other responsibilities. Lord Jesus, I went through that and it put me in the hospital. It was part of what put me in the hospital with stress. Um, and I hate hearing this term. You often hear this, and we mainly hear it in our churches. That's a strong brother right there. He just lost his wife. He just lost his son just last week. And here he is in church this Sunday. Come on, let's give him a round of applause. Or look, that's a strong black woman right there. Or that's a strong woman, regardless of her race. She just went through something last week, and here she is right back up and going. Listen, you don't have to be strong. I hate hearing that. Be human. Be human. Sometimes when I lost my aunt, I had to deal with planning a funeral, getting her body to New Jersey to get her back to have her funeralized there and buried there, and take care of paperwork and all her affairs. And at the same time, I was pastoring the church. You know, I had a business, and I felt like, look, this is what I got to do. I got to be the man right now because this is what has to go on. And I preached. I did a funeral in Tampa. Then I went to Jersey, did a funeral there, and then came right back, got right back to it. You know, preaching and doing Sunday school and everything else that comes with the job of a pastor. And I never took time to grieve. And let me tell you something. Here's some of the feelings that come from delayed grief: fatigue, nausea, lowered immunity, insomnia, aches and pains. Just thinking about it gets me tired. Delayed grief can hurt you. Delayed grief can take you out. Any of them can do it if you don't deal with it. But this delayed grief that is postponed or not immediately experienced after the loss, often due to the need to stay strong or focus on other responsibilities. My brother, my sister, something happens, you lose a loved one, you lose a friend. Nobody's going to give you no reward for getting right back up and being in church the next day or being at work. All this stuff about that's a strong woman, that's a strong man. Kick rocks. Some days you don't want to get out of bed, don't. Some days you want to hug your pillow, hug it. Some days you want to scream, scream. Some days you want to cuss, cuss. I know some folks are, saying, Reverend, how could you say that? Listen, because we do ourselves so much damage, and I've seen this over the years. Yeah, here it is. Here it is, Reverend. Delayed grief easily comes when there's a lot going on and no time to breathe. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you, woman of God. Thank you for saying that. Take time to be. Here's what I suggest to people all the time going through this. Be human. Be human. When I talk to pastors or people within the church realm, in the faith realm, because I deal with people in all faiths, I say be human. Take time to be human. Don't try to be Superman, Superwoman. some of those characteristics of that delayed grief, intense emotions that arise later, sometimes triggered by reminders of the loss. You can hear or see something. I know for me, for my aunt, when I'm watching something on sports, like any type of fight, because we used to always look at the fights together, or we looked at the sports together. It's like, wow, boy, or something funny takes place, and I want to call my mom and say, "Mom, you ain't gonna believe what just happened, what I just saw. You ain't gonna believe this." Or I say, "Hey, Mom, I'm coming to pick you up. I want to take you to show you something." That delayed grief, take time. Okay, take time. Take time, please. I urge you, take time. So those are the griefs that we deal with. The anticipatory grief that is experienced before the loss. It's that it's coming. It's the normal grief, the typical emotional response to loss, which gradually lessens with intensity over time. There's complicated grief, which is prolonged or grief disorder. That's when something violent takes place, or the loss of a child, sudden death, suicide occurs within your family. There's that disenfranchised grief when people don't really acknowledge it, or it's not socially supported. There's that cumulative grief when it's back to back to back. And then there's the delayed grief when you don't deal with it right away because you're too busy being Mr. Man or Miss Woman or Superwoman, or you just basically have to do so much that you don't even have time to stop and grieve or breathe because you're trying to get things done. So those are the type of griefs. I want to talk to you now. Here we are in holidays, and many of us are going through this. I want to talk to you about 5 points while we have time on how to deal with the grief and especially during the holidays. Because again, this could be a rough time. I'm not even going to lie. I come up in a big family, and boy, I miss it. I miss it. Thanksgiving, used to be a house full of people. You had the kids at the kids' table, and then you had the adults at the adult table, and then you had some of the other folks at the other table, and then you had some folks who just stopped past to get a plate, and then some other folks who just stopped past just to see who was there. So it was all that going, and then we did a Christmas breakfast where it was like shifts. We had the adult shift, we had the kids shift, because we have children of different ages and different stages. So all of their friends came. And, my oldest son played football in high school, and we had the team dinners. So we had a house full of football players there. Before the game, sometimes we hosted. So I was used to all of this, and this Thanksgiving, it was just my wife and I, and I was thankful for even that. I was thankful that my wife and I had a chance to do this, but I missed it. Everybody was in different places, all the children in different places, being grown. And hopefully we won't have to go through that again. If y'all listening, come on home. But that's a loss. That's a loss. That's a loss. And you have to deal with that, and you have to come to terms with it. And one part of me just said, well, I ain't gonna cook. Another part of me said, well, we'll just go out. But nah, you got to keep those things going. And that's what we're gonna deal with. So look, number one, dealing with grief, and especially during the holidays, acknowledge your feelings. Okay, just as I got finished telling you, I had to acknowledge my feelings. This is how I feel. Okay, I'm hurt. I'm feeling some kind of way. Okay, suppressing your emotions can increase the intensity of grief. Allowing yourself to feel it is part of the healing process. Okay. Again, don't try to just hold it in and not deal with it. Sister Kim Cook, how you doing? So glad to see you. Again, if you have any statements or questions you want to ask, you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, feel free to post any questions or statements. We'll try to answer them as much as I can. So acknowledge your feelings, okay? Suppressing those emotions can increase the intensity of grief. Allowing yourself to feel is part of the healing process. Remember, I told you, be human. Be human, man. Listen, it's okay. Cry. Go out, walk. Go. You want to be by yourself for a moment? Let somebody know where you are. Keep your phone with you. Answer the phone if somebody calls you. All they're doing is calling to check on you most of the time. I'm not going to say go out and be by yourself too long, because that can cause some problems. Okay, that can cause some problems. We don't want that. Here's some other things to do. Set aside time to journal or meditate about your emotions. You would be surprised. Listen, you see all these? See all these books? See all these? I write. So when I leave this earth, there's going to be, I hope somebody takes these and pens them in book form, because, man, there's some information in it. Some I had to rip out, because when you journal, you don't want anybody else to see your thoughts at that time. You just want to write it out. But set aside time to journal or meditate about your emotions. Talk to God about it. Talk to your God about what's going on. You know, I've been to all of these different schools and all of these. I've got these degrees and this, that, and the other, but I don't have any real theological conversations with God when I'm going through something. I heard an advertisement about this Jamie Foxx special and some of the things that he said. Yeah, I say the same thing. Sometimes my conversation is like, okay, God, look here. I remember when I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for a long period of time, and I sat in the bed and looked out the window. I saw the sun rise, and I saw it get light, and I saw it get dark. I would watch the same trees every day. Sometimes the wind would blow them, sometimes they wouldn't. I saw the birds, I saw rain, I saw wind, and I said to God, I can't believe that you even got me here. I've been preaching, I've been teaching, I've been doing your work, teaching your word, and this is what you allow to happen. I even said, watch this. I negotiated with God. I said, God, I got a list of 10 people I could give you right now who deserve what I'm going through, because I don't even deserve this. This is painful. This hurts. I'm in here dying. And I can give you a list of 10 people that we can trade off, because them jokers are scandalous. Yeah, I was snitching to God, man, trying to negotiate my way out of the hospital. I know that ain't right, man, but that's what my conversation was with God. I was like, God, how could you allow this, man? Seriously? I'm supposed to be your guy, and you let this happen to me? And you know what? All I heard from God was, do you trust me? And I shut my mouth. Now that's a whole different story for a different day. But what I'm trying to tell you is, when we're dealing with grief during these holidays and even beyond this, one of the things is acknowledge your feelings. Set aside time to journal, medicate on your emotion. Brother Tweedle, this is such a good question. What role does a therapist play in dealing with grief? 100%. I know therapist. My therapist has a therapist. So what does that say? Okay. I have a therapist that I've had for a long time, especially dealing with ministry. And I think that God and therapy is the right equation for a good life. That's what I say to that, Brother Tweedo. I 100% support therapy. 100%. Good therapy. Set aside time to journal or meditate about your emotions. Talk about it. Talk about how you feel. Write it out. You'd be surprised what comes from you writing things out. It's like you talking to yourself, and you can see in person, just exactly how you feel. You can talk about it, but when you write it out, oh man, that's something different. It's there. It's there. Share your feelings with trusted friends or a trusted friend or family member. I urge you to move cautiously in this. Okay. Everybody should have a good friend that they can talk to and know that that friend is not just going to, first of all, is not going to share what you talk to them about. But number two, that friend is going to be like a good coach. That friend or that family, you need a good coach to get you off the bench, to say, okay, I let you sit out the third quarter, but it's the fourth quarter now. We're going to pass the ball to you, and I expect you to shoot. Get down court, okay? I expect you in the game. I need you to block. I need you to run. I just need you in the game. So you need a good friend, a good family member who's a coach. And then remind yourself that it's okay. Remember I told you, it's okay to be human. It's okay to cry, to reminisce, or even laugh. I laugh so much at some of the things that yeah, that's it. That's it. Yes, a friend that will tell you the truth no matter what. That is the real deal. I just posted something. A real friend won't allow someone else to talk about you. A real team member, somebody on your team, is a person that won't allow somebody else to talk about you. Okay? Oh, not yet. Not yet, Brother Downson. You definitely will know. You definitely will know. We're going to start our book club back up again. But remind yourself, it's okay to cry, to reminisce or laugh. I was telling you about laughing. Every now and then, I see something about an 8-track tapes. And I never forget the time that I put my car in reverse. I had an 8-track player and a box speaker. And I put my car in reverse and I ran into an Atlantic City electric truck. It was parked, but I was in reverse. And the reason I was in reverse is because my uncle taught me that if you have an 8-track and you're trying to rewind the tape, if you put the car in reverse, you could rewind it back to the track that you wanted to listen to. And I told this story to my mom, and my mother said, "Who told you that?" And I said, "My uncle told me that." He said, "You idiot. He was playing with you." And I laughed to myself about that. I recall that story along with some of the other 90,000 stories that I know about. And I laugh, and it helps me to deal with this period of grieving, this holiday season when we all grieve our loved ones. So acknowledge your feelings. Number 2, adjust expectations and traditions. Why the pressure to maintain normal holiday routines can feel overwhelming when you're grieving. Sometimes you just don't want to be a part of some of the normal holiday routines. Okay. What do you do when you don't want to, or when those holiday routines feel overwhelming to you? Well, it is suggested that you simplify holiday activities or focus on the ones most meaningful to you. Okay. So just simplify, just take it down a little bit, Um, maybe you don't want to host a whole house full of people, but maybe you can help somebody else, or maybe you just want to hang out with a few friends and watch some movies. Maybe you just want to hang out with your wife or your husband, your boo, and you just want to Netflix and chill. I don't know if I can say that. Maybe you just want to watch some movies, eat some popcorn. Do that, whatever. Maybe you just want to go fishing. You want to go fishing, you want to go play some basketball, you want to go golf, do something. Okay, do something different. Okay. Create new traditions that honor the person that you're grieving, such as lighting a candle or making their favorite dish. You may want to have family and friends over during that day, during that time, during the holidays, and say, you know what? I want to honor all of our parents, all of our cousins, all of our relatives that have passed away. We're going to ask each person to light a candle in their honor. And then someone say a prayer or a moment of silence. And this way you keep the tradition going, but you kind of get it to a situation where you feel like you're honoring those who have passed. Be kind to yourself by saying no to certain events or obligations that feel too hard to manage. No is one of the most empowering words that you could ever imagine. I learned how to say no too late, to be honest with you. It wasn't until after I got sick that I learned to say, nope, not doing that. I won't be there. Number 3 of 5. We're dealing with talking points, dealing with grief during the holidays. Honor your loved one's memory. No, I'm sorry. Seek connection with others. Seek connection with others. Isolation can worsen feelings of sadness, while support from others can provide comfort. I told you before, get with some folks that could get you through this, okay? Join a support group. There's nothing wrong with a support group, along with therapy, either in person or online. They've got support groups now, thank goodness for social media. You can join support groups that can help you through the grief period, whatever type of grief that you're dealing with, loss of a pet, loss of a job. Some people deal with a loss of limb. They have a stroke, their arm, they can't use their leg right now, or they're going through therapy. That's a loss. That's a loss. So get a support group, specifically for those grieving. Schedule time to be with loved ones who understand and respect your feelings. Take your time to be with them. Okay. Invite someone to do a low-key activity with you, like watching a movie or going for a walk. I told you, it's a great thing. Say, hey, bro, hey, sis, what you doing? Let's go take a walk. Let's go to the aquarium. Let's go to the movies. Do something to seek connection with her. Listen, I got a group of guys, and I got people for every segment. Okay. I got a group of guys that we meet once a month, and we do what men do when we get together. Sometimes we have a fish fry. Sometimes we go out and tell jokes, laugh at each other, ask about how we doing, talk about our families, how we doing, tell jokes, watch sports, tell lies, all of that stuff that men do. But that helps me, and it helps us. And we started this during COVID, and we're still going. It's 4 years now. We're ready to close out the year, getting together. So, I got other groups that do this, other groups that do that. So get with people. You might have graduated from a college. You get with your alumni group. Everybody has alumni groups. Get with them. Get with some friends. Get with some relatives, people at your faith institution. Join ministries. Most ministries, most faith institutions, church, mosque, temples, they have birthday clubs. Join a birthday club. Get to know people. Some churches have groups, like you go to a church and you're from Jersey you're from Pennsylvania, they have a Pennsylvania club, they have a Jersey club, and you can make connections like that. Number 4, one more to go, 2 more to go. Number 4 and number 5, honor your loved one's memory. Memorializing someone can transform feelings of loss into moments of gratitude for the time that you had together. Here's how you do this. Create a memory box or a scrapbook with photos, letters, or mementos. I never tell people to get past it, get over it, because that's like you are dismissing that person. Okay. And I would never tell anybody that. Share stories about them with others who knew and loved them. Okay. Share those stories. Volunteer or donate in their honor to causes that they cared about. Find out or try to remember what they cared about, and then volunteer on behalf of that. I'm getting ready to go somewhere, and my wife and I, we're going somewhere, and we're taking part in something in honor of my uncle. Okay, and it's in honor of my uncle. I wanted to do this in honor of him, and I feel good about it. And you know, I know it's going to be emotional for me, but we're going to do this. Last but not least, practice self-care and manage stress. I can't emphasize this enough. Grief is emotionally and physically exhausting, especially during a busy holiday season. Well, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Here's what you do. Prioritize rest. Make sure that you rest, because without rest, your resistance is low. And that's when the attack of the enemy is most dangerous. Okay. Your immune system can't fight it off. You can't resist it. You don't have the strength to resist it. Hydration. You see me, I drink a lot of water. Drink a lot of water. You'd be surprised what water. Our bodies are comprised mostly of water. Okay. Hydration. Eat nourishing foods. Okay. Think about what you put in your body. If I put this in my body, is this going to be fuel to help me get through some of the things that I want to do? Or is it going to cause me pain? Is it going to cause me inflammation? Stay away from sugar. Sugar's bad in all forms. Stay away from the donuts. Stay away from the cakes as much as you can. Everything in moderation. Let me put it to you like that. Everything in moderation, because as I speak, I'm thinking about a nice little cup of butter pecan ice cream. Do your history on butter pecan ice cream. You'd be surprised about what that means. Anyway, prioritize rest, hydration, eating nourishing foods. Take breaks from mindfulness practices such as yoga or breathing exercises. I should have dealt with that before we started. And it's real simple. One of the things I do throughout the day is I breathe in 3 seconds. I hold it through. I breathe in through my nose 3 seconds. I hold it, and then I let it out through my mouth. I do that 3 times, and on the 4th time, I breathe in real deep. I hold it for 5 to 10 seconds, and then I push it out. Okay, and I do that throughout the day because that kind of gets us back in rhythm. Gets us back in rhythm. And it gives you, and make sure you I take naps. Okay. I rest because our circadian rhythm gets all thrown off balance, and that can hurt us. Last but not least, engage in small activities that bring you comfort or joy, like listening to music or reading. I love music of all genres. We talked about that before. I love reading, as you can see. I got books all over the place. Right now, I'm really dealing with Stony Road We Tried, Setting Boundaries with Difficult People by Alison Bokey. And man, this is a good book right here. Woo! Rest in the Storm by Kurt Byron Jones. This is such a great book. So learn to read. Even if you just read, I try to read 10 pages a day, 20 pages a day. Sometimes I'll read the whole book. All depends on how I feel. But read. But whatever you do something about grief, stress, especially during these holidays. Acknowledge your feelings, adjust expectations and traditions, seek connections with others, honor your loved one's memory, practice self-care, and manage stress. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this time that we've been able to spend together. We pray now for each person who's on this line, whether they're watching through Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Lord, I pray for their families. I pray for them as they may be encountering grief, even as we speak. Help them, Lord, that something I said, something you said through me, touch them and will get them through this process. Lord, I pray for a safe holiday for all of those who are in this sphere of influence right now. And we just say thank you for being able to have this space to help one another and become community. I pray now that each and every one of you would have a blessed week, a blessed time, a good night's sleep, and wake up to see another day. God bless you. God keep you. In Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, love you much. Thanks for hanging in there with me. It's 8:01. Only kept you 1 minute over. Go out and meet needs and solve problems. I love each and every one of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Peace. Till next week.